Doctor sir, could you stop your share screen?
Yeah, sure.
This is the time. Thank you, sir.
Okay, 2 minutes.
We have 1 minute to go. We start the meeting today. Good day and konnichiwa. My warm greetings and good wishes to all the distinguished speakers and participants. I'm extremely glad to welcome all of you to the webinar on exploring Japan-India cooperation in defense, space, aerospace, and homeland sectors. The Indo-Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry has been striving to strengthen India-Japan relations in educational, culture, and commerce since 1989. We organize several economic seminars and webinars, receive delegations from Japan, and take business delegations to Japan. Publishing bi-monthly newsletter and resource paper on various topics to further economic ties between Japan and India. The last one in December 2024 was about the seminar theme. When I started working with Colonel Vaibhav, author of the resource paper, in December, I expressed my interest to do a webinar with the participation of veterans in the field from India and Japan. Our joint efforts have at last taken shape. Colonel Vibhu Vaibhav has taken a lot of efforts for the webinar. But for him, this webinar would have been impossible. He has many plans for future activities on the theme, and I'm happy he is moderating the session. A few words about our moderator. Colonel Vibhu Vaibhav, a colonel and a veteran in the Indian Army, well-known influential strategist and analytical problem solver in the field of defense, aerospace, space, homeland, and infrastructure. He's been instrumental in planning and execution of complex defense services ICT projects worth multi-thousand crores within quality frameworks, timelines, and ensuring compliance to industry. He's played a prominent role in formulation of procurement policies of SOPs for capital projects for Indian Armed Forces. A warm welcome to Colonel Vibhu Vaibhav. I am beholden to the galaxy of eminent speakers from the domain as our panel of speakers today. For the keynote address, we have Dr. Veera Muthuvel, an eminent scientist in the Indian space sector, senior scientist at the ISRO, and the project director of Chandrayaan-3. He is also the study director for future missions. He is the recipient of Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar 2024 and IIF World Space Award for contributions for the Chandrayaan mission. A warm welcome to Dr. Veera Muthuvel. Mr. Kenji Miyata, representing the government of Japan, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is a good friend and a well-wisher of IJCCI and India-Japan relations. He is the acting Consul General in the Consulate General of Japan in Chennai. He's been very encouraging and supportive. He has helped us a lot in the webinar. A warm welcome to you, Miyata-san. Mr. Miyata's former colleague in the ministry, Aya Iwamoto-san, has helped us a lot. I welcome Aya-san for the webinar and convey my sincere thanks to Madam Aya Iwamoto. Yukiko Fukuyama-san from Unido ITBO Tokyo has helped us in the webinar. Thanks to my friend who heads Unido ITBO Tokyo, Mr. Ferrada, for lending his support to the webinar. A warm welcome to Ferrada-san and Fukuyama-san, and I record my special thanks to both of them. I have great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Hiroaki Miyoshi. He is a satellite communication system and space data system expert. He is currently active as an NEC fellow, promoting new commercial space utilization markets through the combination of our space technology and ICTs. Our speaker, Mr. Arunakar Mishra, is the MD and CEO of Genzer Space and IT Private Limited. He is also a member of the board at National Aerospace Laboratories, as well as founder and member governing board mission, Aerospace Foundation of India. A warm welcome to you, sir. A warm welcome to Mr. Julius Amrit. He is a product of IIT Delhi and IIM Calcutta. He is the COO of the New Space Research and Technologies Limited, which is making waves in the dash domain with a supreme vision and fantastic products. Our warm welcome to Mr. Eddie Kato. He is the President and Managing Director of Astroscale in Tokyo. Earlier, he had successfully built and ran his own strategic advisory firm. Also, he had worked at Thales Orbital Sciences, Lockheed Martin, and General Electric in leadership roles. I extend a hearty welcome to Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, a former military secretary of the Indian Army and the Director General Military Operations. He is the first Director General of the Indian Space Association, which is spearheading the cross-collaboration in space between the industry and the government. Our speaker, Mr. Anuj Rikhe, is a partner at Accuracy with over 2 decades of advisory experience and is focused on cross-border supply chains and merger and acquisition and performance improvement focused on aerospace, industrial, and consumer sectors. A warm welcome to Mr. Anuj Rikhe. Our speaker, Mr. Minoru Hanakata. He has over 20 years of experience in the aerospace sector. He is the General Manager of the International Affairs Division of the Society of Japanese Aerospace Companies. I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Minoru Hanakata. Mr. R. Sridhar is a partner at the Grant Thornton Bharat LLP and a well-known voice on tax and regulatory matters. He advises foreign and Indian clients in structuring acquisitions and setting up businesses in India. Mr. Sridhar has been contributing a lot to IJCCI by being a knowledge partner in all our events. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Sridhar. Ladies and gentlemen, I extend a hearty welcome to all the participants who have joined us through the Zoom network. I am confident we will have a vibrant webinar today. I now hand over to our moderator and request Colonel Vibhu Vaibhav to conduct the proceedings of the day.
Thank you, ma'am. Very warm welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, who have joined us today in this very interesting webinar in which we aim to explore the Indo-Japan collaboration in the new sunrise sector of DASH, that is Defense, Aerospace, Space and Homeland. We'll commence the seminar with a keynote address to be given by Dr. P. Veeramuthuvil. Just a few words about him. A very well-known eminent personality in the Indian space sector. He is a senior scientist at ISRO and the project director of Chandrayaan-3. He is well known to have led the collaboration of ISRO with NASA and other international agencies, and he has also spearheaded development of nanosatellites for India. He's a study director for the missions to Moon and Mars. He's also a recipient of national awards like Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar 2024 and the IF World Space Award for contribution to Chandrayaan 3. I think for our webinar, he's the most eminent person with whom we can have today. I'll request Dr. P. Veeramathuvel to kindly give the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to everyone. Am I audible?
Sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this event. I'm very, very happy to present some of our space activities by ISRO to this Indo-Japan Chamber for Commerce and Industry, and also exploring the topic on Japan-India cooperation in defense, aerospace, space, and homeland. I have few slides. I will dwell upon in general what ISRO is doing, and also to specific to Indo-Japan collaborative Chandrayaan mission, which is slated for launch in 2028. Coming to space system, you can go to the full slide. Full slide. Just my slide is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as you all know, some of them may be very familiar with the space activities. The space consists of three important components. One is the launch vehicle, spacecraft, and ground segment. And multiple agencies is involved in the satellite development, launch, and operations. And as you can see, the satellite will sit on top of the rocket. And one of the spacecraft you can see in the picture, the center one, which is the Chandrayaan 3 spacecraft, which was launched in 2023. Next slide. We have various launch vehicles. We started with SLV-3. That was the first launch vehicle which has really put the spacecraft into the required orbit with a payload mass of 40 kg. From the humble beginning, we have now come up with various launch vehicles like ASLV, PSLV, GSLV, and LVM-3. The main workhorse is PSLV. This vehicle has injected many satellites into the orbit. It is a versatile vehicle where it has put the spacecraft into the polar sun-synchronous polar orbit, and also the geosynchronous transfer orbit, and also the inclined orbits, which has a liftoff capability of 1860 kg to 1300 kg to the various orbits. And the next, the launch vehicle is GSLV, which also has a capability of putting the spacecraft into the geosynchronous transfer orbit with a mass of 2200 kg. And the next heaviest launch vehicle we have in ISRO so far is the LVM-3, which can put the spacecraft mass of 4000 kg into the geosynchronous transfer orbit. And this vehicle was successfully used in Chandrayaan 2 and Chandrayaan 3 as well. Let me go to the next one. So coming to the satellites and applications, the main idea of our Indian space program is to meet the common man needs. Particularly, we have various applications. One is the remote sensing satellites and communication satellites, navigation, space science. Coming to communication, we have various applications like telecommunication, teleeducation, telemedicine, broadcasting, direct to earth, direct to home, broadband internet, etc. And coming to the Earth observation satellites, that is called remote sensing satellites, we have various applications like water resources, oceanography, energy and environment, rural and urban development planning, weather and disaster management, agriculture, etc. And coming to navigation, we have again, which is actually widely service to aviation industries, marine, and then the agriculture, etc. And space science, of course, we have astronomy research, space exploration, planetary exploration, and so on. Next slide. So we have various satellites which was launched so far. One is the Earth observation satellites. We have Cartosat kind of satellites. It's basically a Earth observation satellite, which is used for various applications like agriculture, which I was mentioning. We have host of Cartosat series, Cartosat 1, 2, 3, and we are having the third generation of satellite. And with regard to OceanSat, which is basically a oceanography study, Particularly, it will aim for potential fishing zone and so on, and also the resource applications. And communication satellites, we have a series of INSAT series of satellites. We had initially started with INSAT first series, and then second and third and fourth series of satellites. And navigations also, we initially started with the IRNSS, which is primarily meet the requirements of Indian regional navigation satellite system. And now we have navigation satellites, we call it as NVS. We had two satellites in the series which was launched, and third, fourth, and fifth are going to be launched in the upcoming days. And space exploration, again coming to science exploration, we had various missions like Astrosat, Mars Orbiter mission, and Chandrayaan 1, 2, 3. I'm going to talk about Chandrayaan program in the next slide. Next slide. Coming to the Indian Lunar Exploration Program, we started with Chandrayaan 1. Primarily, we reached to the moon. We acquired the moon orbit using Chandrayaan 1. That was the first mission to the interplanetary. It was a first by ISRO. It acquired the another planet. So reaching the moon, impacting with the probe scientific experiment was successfully conducted in Chandrayaan 1. And Chandrayaan 2, we had a full-fledged orbiter, lander, and rover scientific experiments. Of course, the Chandrayaan 2, it had two objectives. One is orbiter, another one is lander. But orbiter was largely successful, even though the mission life is 1 year. But we are now operating more than 4 years. Whereas the landing part, we could not be successfully soft land. Hence, the Chandrayaan 3 mainly aimed for having a soft landing onto the lunar surface and deploying the rover and conducting an in situ scientific experiments. This was the main objective of Chandrayaan 3, which was successfully accomplished. And coming to Chandrayaan 4, which we are planning to launch in the coming years, which is targeting for returning the sample safely to the Earth. And Chandrayaan 5, which is the most awaited thing, which is again a Indo-Japan collaborative mission, which we call it as a LoopX, which is going to have a precise landing and deploying the rover onto the permanently shadowed region, which I'm going to cover in detail on that. Next slide. So there are a lot of uniqueness of Chandrayaan 3. It was indigenously built, all these mission planning, launch vehicles, spacecraft. And also we had a tiny rover, which has a mass of 25 kg with all the sophisticated scientific measurements, scientific instruments in both lander and rover. And we also had a host of cutting edge technologies to accomplish the landing objective. Next slide. So there are various elements involved in Chandrayaan 3. Just to give a glimpse, we had a propulsion module. This main aim of the module is to take the lander all the way to the moon. And once the propulsion module job is completed, the lander will descend onto the surface. And upon landing, the rover will come out of the lander. So there are various masses. The all put together is 3,900 kg is the total lift-off mass, which was the launch vehicle LVM-3 was used here. And we had 6 scientific instruments, 3 in lander, 2 in rover, and 1 in propulsion module. The main objective is safe and soft landing, rover roving on the surface, and in situ scientific experiments. Next slide. So we had a various events, like we had a launch on 14th July 2023, and we successfully injected the translunar injection by 31st July, and we successfully captured the lunar orbit insertion, that is acquiring the moon with an elliptical orbit on 5th August 2023, and on 17th August we have separated the propulsion module and lander, and on 23rd August we successfully landed onto the moon. And we had various trajectory designs, like leaving the Earth and then acquiring the moon, finally having a descent trajectory which has taken the lander onto the surface. And we also had important ground stations which we have hired in addition to our ISRO ground stations. We have taken the support from European Space Agency as well as JPL, NASA. Next slide. And this is where the Chandrayaan 3 was landed. It was exactly on near to the South Pole, where the latitude was 69.36 degrees south and 32.3 degree east. Next. And there are a host of scientific instruments which I was referring. There are three scientific instruments in lander, two in rover, and one in propulsion module. I'm not going to dwell on this. We had a seismic activity, a sensor called ILSA, then another probe, we call it as a chaste. This probe was inserted onto the lunar regolith, which will which had measured the temperature and thermal conductivity over the time. And also we had Langmuir probe, which has measured the near surface plasma environment. These all are very important for us to plan for a future missions, because near to the pole, we were the first country to deploy the lander rover near to the South Pole. And it is of so paramount importance for all these experiments, so that this will pave a way for our future true landing onto the moon. There are series of Chandrayaan missions are going to come, which will finally culminate the Indian astronaut on the moon by 2040. And we also had two rover instruments. One is alpha particle X-ray spectrometer. Another one is laser induced breakdown spectroscope, which will measure the major and minor rock forming elements on the lunar regolith. And we also had one scientific payload on the propulsion module called spectropolarimetry habitable planet for Earth. This instrument is also very important. We are observing this from the moon's orbit, observing the Earth. We know the Earth is very it has a microbial life, and we know it is human life is there. Once we know the signature of this, we can use this instrument in the future interplanetary missions, so that whether we can explore whether Earth 2 is there or not. The next slide. And as I already talked about, Chandrayaan 4 is basically a lunar sample return mission. We have demonstrated successfully the landing capability in Chandrayaan 3. Now, having done that, we want to bring the sample back safely to the Earth by 2027-23. We have aimed to bring the subsurface sample as well as surface samples using a host of instruments on board with this several modules. Next slide. The Chandrayaan 5 is also a precise, as I already told, it is a LUPEX ISRO JAXA mission, which is a LUPEX mission aiming for a precise landing near to the permanently shadowed region. We'll be the first to do that near to the permanently shadowed region. We have an high capacity lander and rover, and also we are going to survive for a longer duration. Chandrayaan 3, if you see, the mission life was only one lunar day, which is equivalent to 14 Earth days. In this mission, we are going to survive for 100 days, 100 Earth days. This will pave a way for a long-term survival mission. And this also we are aiming by 2028-29. Next slide. And I'm not going into the Chandrayaan 4. It's also a complex mission. We are going to bring the sample back. We'll be leaving the Earth, acquiring the moon. There are several modules planned in this mission. Some modules will land onto the surface. Some module will lift off from the once the sample is collected, and another module is parked onto the lunar orbit. And this module will transfer the sample to the parked module. And finally, this module will escape from the moon's sphere of influence to the Earth. And once it comes to the Earth, we will be just above the Earth surface. We will be deploying the re-entry module. Once the re-entry module descends onto the Earth surface, and it brings the sample back, the lunar sample back to the Earth, with a mission duration of approximately 60 days from the time we leave the Earth and then bring back the sample. And we are planning to bring a sample back with a mass of 5 to 6 kgs, which contains both surface and subsurface samples. Next slide. As I was telling, the LUPEX mission is also very important for this particular audience. It is an Indo-Japan collaborative mission. The ISRO's responsibility is primarily on the mission design, trajectory design, lander design, and realization of some of the payloads and the deep space network from the ISRO ground stations. And the JAXA responsibility, that is Japanese responsibilities, are developing a big rover and launch vehicle, and also the deep space network ground stations. And as I told, we are going to have a soft and precise landing at closest to the South Pole, which is the landing site is connecting ridge, which is target to land at 89.4 degrees south and 222.85 degree east. And this will be the first ever mission for robotic exploration of a permanently shadowed region at a lunar South Pole region. and direct study of lunar polar volatiles and elemental composition. We are also going to quantify the water content. This is going to be a very, very important scientific instruments on onboard lander and rover, which will really give the quantification of water molecules onto the lunar surface, exactly onto the South Pole. This no one has done. We are planning to do in this Indo-Japan collaborative mission. As I mentioned, it is an 100 days long mission, which will be the precursor for long duration lunar missions and habitats. Next slide. And this is some of the mission planning where the Japanese rocket will inject the lander and rover into a highly elliptical orbit by 250 by 1,40,000 kilometer. And with that, the lander propulsion will take the craft all the way to the moon, and we'll be circularizing the orbit from the elliptical capture orbit. And once it is done, the lander will descend onto the lunar surface and deploy the rover. And the rover, the path planning also is given in this picture, where we have a typically kind of a drilling mission where it can drill up to 1.5 meter depth onto the surface, and which will be looking for an water exploration, as I was telling. Next slide. These are some of the pictures of the LoopX mission, where the lander and rover, you can see the rover is put on top of the lander, and it is a high capacity lander. This mass is around 6.2 tons, that is 6,200 kg. The rover mass is around approximately 350 kg, which is entirely developed by Japan. Next. And also a host of scientific instruments on lander and rover. Like ISRO, we have got so many payloads like ground penetrating radar, mid-IR spectrometer, then Pratima, permittivity and thermophysical investigation for moon's aquatic spout, Raman spectrometer, and we also have a JAXA payload from Japanese friends, near IR spectrometer, neutron spectrometer, exospheric mass spectrometer, resource investigation water analyzer. It is a very, very crucial instrument, and lunar gravimetric analyzer, and then Tritron. Then we have ADOR, which will analyze the water content in the lunar sample based on cavity ring down spectrometry. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for inviting me once again to be part of this important event. Next slide. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Dr. Veeramuthuyal, for the keynote address. I'm sure the audience would be really, privileged and will become much more knowledgeable after hearing to you. We now move on to the next stage of the webinar, and this is the felicitation address by Mr. Kenji Miyata. Just a few words about him. Mr. Miyata is a career diplomat and is a product of the University of Shizuoka as well as University of Peradeniya. Since 1991, he has been serving in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and has had multiple tenures in countries abroad like Sri Lanka, 3 tenures, Australia, and later on with India. Since 2022, he has been the Deputy Consul General, the Consul General of Japan at Chennai in India, and has been instrumental in getting a lot of collaboration facilitated between the Japanese industries and the Indian industries. I now request Mr. Kenji Miyata to kindly deliver the felicitation address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. Good morning to you all in India, and good afternoon to you all in Japan. I thank Dr. Veeramuthuyal for your substantial and informative keynote address. It's very useful and good start for today's discussion. I'm very pleased to welcome the best experts from India and Japan to this webinar on DASH, organized by the Indo-Japan Chamber of Commerce Industry, IJCCI. I thank the IJCCI and Colonel Vibhu Weaver, today's moderator, for planning and coordinating this important webinar. My special thanks goes to Ms. Suguna Ramamurthy, Secretary General of IJCCI, for her tireless effort to make all arrangements till this morning. As Suguna-san just mentioned, that IJCCI has been committed to expanding India-Japan relations in Chennai for many years. With the support of experts in various fields, they have been making significant contribution in academic field by organizing meetings and providing research papers. Today's webinar is one such a good example. I also, joining Suguna-san, take this opportunity to express my appreciation to contribution of my old friend, Ms. Aya Iwamoto, Vice President Strategy and Policy at Astroscale Japan, who used to work with me at Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Without her help, we could not have the participant from Japan today. The relationship between India and Japan has been growing closer and stronger over the past 70 years. We have developed our cooperation and coordination in various fields, including politics, security, and economy. We also working together on today's theme, Defense, Aerospace, Space, and Homeland, which is an area with great potential for our future cooperation and development. For expanding our bilateral relation, it is important and necessary to discuss and share information on our future agenda. In particular, I hope that today's webinar will be an opportunity to develop the relationship between Indian and the Japanese participant, and that new cooperation will emerge from the new partnership. We have announced the year 2025 to 26, starting from this April, as the India-Japan Year of Science, Technology, and Innovation. This initiative commemorates the 40th anniversary of our Science and Technology Memorandum of Understanding from 1985 and aims to enhance collaborative efforts in research and development. So today's webinar is very timely and important for our future collaboration. Finally, once again, I thank IJCCI and all speakers for organizing and joining this wonderful event. And sincerely thank you all for reminding me of new cooperation frontier between our two countries. I wish you all the best and success. Thank you. ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much, Mr. Kenji Miyata, for the encouraging words. We now move on to the conduct part of the webinar. We have 4 technical sessions scheduled today in our webinar. The first technical session will explore the opportunities for Japanese industries in Indian defense, aerospace, and homeland sectors. We have one speaker from the Japanese industries giving out the Japanese industry perspective, and 2 speakers who will give out the Indian industry perspective from Indian point of view. I first welcome Mr. Hiroki Miyoshi, who is Fellow Aerospace National Security Business Unit of the NEC Corporation. At the NEC, he has worked on the development of onboard computers and spacecraft autonomy for Earth observation satellites Midori and Daiichi, as well as satellite communication systems connecting space station to the ground. He has also worked for about 10 years on the development of space data systems. And later on, he was in charge of project management for large-scale practical ICT systems, which created social values and contributed to establishing Japan's national infrastructure for science, national security, and navigation and timing. He is currently active as an NEC Fellow, promoting new commercial space utilization markets through the combination of space technologies and ICTs. Over to Mr. Hiroki Miyoshi.
Can you see my presentation file?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
it is visible.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'll talk about the importance of Japan-India cooperation on the social implementation of low Earth orbit with satellite constellations. Under the title of New Value of Japan-India cooperation for free and open space activities. Okay, hello again. My name is Hiroaki Miyoshi from NEC Aerospace and National Security Business Unit. I was lucky to experience almost everything, not only engineering, but also running one of the biggest space companies in Japan and business development by means of space utilizations. Based on these experiences, I'm currently working as an evangelist to make the other industries who have unmet needs aware of value from space and to increase the funds and customers of space industries. Okay, first of all, we have an opportunity. I illustrated this with a figure taken from the white paper on 2024 compiled by the Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry. The figure on the left is an estimated the GDP scale in 50 years in terms of the size of the bubble. This figure showed that the size of the Asia and Indo-Pacific economy in 50 years will account for about half of the world's total. The right-hand side shows the increase the inter-regional trade generated by the mid to long-term economic growth. This figure shows that the intra-Asia and Indo-Pacific trade will become dominant over trade with regions outside. In other words, it is highly likely that within the next 20 years or so, demand for next generation digital platforms that contribute to supply chain resilience will increase in this region to prepare for catastrophic disasters and economic security. What is the next generation digital platform that will seize these opportunities and bring future prosperity to Asia and Indo-Pacific region? Based on the mega trends in the 2030s, we considered what a society in which all consumers can fully realize their humanity should look like on 3 layers: environment, society, and lives. On the environmental front, it will be important not only to continue working to mitigate climate change, but also to adapt it. We will need a real-time sensing network that extends over land, sea, and air in order to improve the efficiency of using weather-dependent renewable energy and to fulfill the digital transformation of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. On the society front, it will be important for the entire global supply chain to work towards a transition to a recycling-oriented society. Taking the example of the European digital product passport, companies will need to collect environmental and product information across borders to ensure transparency in the supply chain. However, this is inextricably linked to sensitive information that can affect the company's competitiveness, such as raw material information. We need to interconnect the companies that make up the supply chain in a private network without relying on the internet, which possess security risks, or hyperscalers, which possesses risks to digital sovereignty. In terms of lives, it will be important for society to deal with the declining birth rate, aging population, and severe disasters. As the birth rate declines and the population ages, public utilities will find it difficult to maintain their own radio networks, and the industry sector will be forced to expand the scope of unmanned vehicle utilization via radio. We will need a system that supports mission-critical communication services that support safe and secure lives throughout society, from peace times to emergencies. I believe it will be important to build a network in space using space optical communication technology to complement the Internet's weakness. I call this is a specified Internet. The specified Internet will transform underdeveloped areas of communications, surveillance, and navigation infrastructure, such as deserts and over oceans, into spaces for economic activity. This will alleviate the concentration of population in urban areas and the environmental burdens. The specified Internet will be able to share public services or transportation and logistics infrastructure across borders. This will make economic activities sustainable in an era of declining birth rate and aging populations. The specified Internet is an enabler that will create future prosperity to the growing Asia and Indo-Pacific regions. Finally, I'd like to make recommendations to all of you. For the economic growth and security in Asia and Indo-Pacific region, I believe that now is the time for Japan and India to transcend national and industrial boundaries and work together to implement the specified Internet with satellite constellations. Establishing a supply chain for rockets and satellites to meet the repeated demand of the satellite constellation era will bring flexibility of space utilizations to the Asia and Indo-Pacific region. And besides, this will also provide an opportunity to apply and develop our supply chain cultivated by automotives or industrial robotics for space-based products and services. I believe that the growth of the Asia and the Indo-Pacific region, which will be responsible for about half of the world economy in 50 years, will contribute to the world through peaceful development that leaves no one behind. That's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Miyoshi. I just have one question for you.
Yeah.
You see, Japan has a very vibrant dash ecosystem. And the similarity with India is the focus on self-reliance, the way Japan has, built its own dash ecosystem in the country. Now, India too is focused towards self-reliance, or Make in India, as we call it. In your view, how best the Japanese company are poised or can get involved to help out the Indian industry in this quest of theirs?
Okay, thank you for your question. My opinion is a co-build of the satellite constellation Indo-Japan collaboration, because there is a many opportunity to build a satellite and launching a rocket, and also the satellite constellation rounding around the Earth, so the services will be shared between India and Japan and the other areas. And this is make future prosperity, economic growth. So I think we combined to effort to build a new market for the futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miyoshi. That's a very encouraging, statement from you. We now move on to the next speaker in this technical session. I invite now Mr. Arunaka Mishra, who will be giving the industry view on this session. Just a few words about him. Mr. Mishra is the MD and CEO of the Gensar Aerospace and IT Private Limited. He is also a member of the board at NALTEC, and as well as the founder and member of the governing board Mission Aerospace Foundation of India. He is a veteran of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited and is a well-known voice in the aerospace sector. And I think perhaps from the Indian industry perspective, we're lucky to have him here on board today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Colonel Vaibhav. And I think I have some slides which someone can help. Yeah. And good morning to everyone and good afternoon in Japan. So my focus will be covering the opportunities and how to complement Indian and Japanese capabilities, particularly in the area of civil aerospace or commercial aerospace. And one more thing I wanted to share before we go into this. I had extensive interaction in last 3-4 years with many Japanese companies. One of them was during Indo-Japanese CEO meet in Japan. And also in October, there was JA 2024, Japan Aerospace 2024 event, where we have very extensive interaction with the help of Society of Japanese Aerospace Companies, Mr. Hanakata actually. So please move to the next one. Also, what I would be doing here is, apart from general opportunities for cooperation, I would also give a case study where cooperation is immediately possible. So next slide. So the coverage will be what characterizes Indian aerospace structure and its capabilities. Recent industry initiative, various opportunities, cooperation possibilities, investment-ready project example, a case study. And then I will sum up the thoughts from recent Indo-Japanese interaction. So next. Next. So Indian aerospace industry has been built over 9 decades. There are 4 lead aerospace organizations, HAL, ISRO, DRDO, and NAL, and then many supporting organizations. Recently, many overseas organizations have come in and joined forces. So I will not read each line, it will take time. So we move to the next. The aerospace and aviation activity is spread all over India, but the main concentration is in the Bangalore region for the aerospace product development and the Delhi and Mumbai region for the aviation. So we go to the next. Now, these are some of the civil aircraft programs. What you see on the top left is SARAS Mark II program. On the right hand side is lots of companies have sprung up in the area of drone. The below the white one is HAL 228. It is a 19-seater aircraft. On the right hand side, I don't think I can move the cursor and show perhaps. So I'm going from top to right and then down. So Dornier 228 is a whitish kind of an aircraft, and to the right you see a bigger aircraft which is called RTA 70. It has the design, the feasibility study has been done, but the design and development has to start. Below is a one Hansa aircraft, which is a trainer aircraft. In the middle, 2 aircraft which you see are 7-seat business jet under development, which the Gensar is spearheading. Bottom, you see number of helicopters. The leftmost is the advanced light helicopter, which is a very versatile helicopter. It has got multi-role, civil and commercial, civil and military roles. So we move to the next. India has, over a period of 9 decades, built very extensive ecosystem. It has got research and development, manufacturing, fabrication capabilities, structural assemblies, products and systems development and manufacturing, materials and consumables, tools, test equipment, support services, and across the fixed wing and the rotary wing. On the right hand side, there is a list of very large number of companies supporting the entire ecosystem, making consumables, uh, things like batteries, equipments, etc. So there is a complete ecosystem built over 9 decades. Next. There are more than 100 companies engaged in aerospace manufacturing, both the government sector and many private sector companies, which have started working on global aerospace supply chain for Airbus, Boeing, and many others. Next. Similarly, there are more than 50 companies engaged in engineering services. Engineering services are basically doing design activity for other organizations, global organizations. So they would do for example, the flight control system for Airbus or flight data monitoring systems and things like that. Various kinds of detailed design of various portions of the aircraft and things like that. So more than 50 companies are there which are engaged in engineering services support to Indian as well as global OEMs of aerospace. Next. We also have airlines and MRO. Today, the main airline now is Air India, which has consolidated many other smaller airlines. And then we have got low-cost carriers, many of them. The leading one is Indigo. And then we have MRO and support systems and airports and like. So we'll move to the next. This has been talked about in detail by Dr. Viru Muthuvel. So I'm not covering this one. Next. What are the recent industry initiatives? We go to the next one. So lots of JVs, acquisitions, MOUs have happened. Not many between India and Japan. Perhaps Mahindra and Shin Maiwa had a JV. It is moving or it is in some state of discussion. But there is scope for many more types of acquisitions or JVs or MOUs between Indian and Japanese companies. We move to the next. In India, we have special economic zones which can be made use of by Japanese companies, benefits of duties, taxes, and things like that. Many overseas aerospace companies have made use of that. Next. Let us talk about some opportunities. So go to the next one. What is happening is there is a hyperactivity in India. Over 500 million air travelers will be there by 2030. By 2047, it is likely to be the biggest aviation market, India. Airports have increased from 74 and it is going to be almost 220 by 25 and 400 airports over a period. So India is forecasted to need about 2,000 more additional aircraft by 2040. There is 5-fold expansion indicated in general aviation, that is the smaller aircraft. So now we have about 300, it could become 1,500 in a decade or so. MRO market is also growing because we are acquiring large number of aircraft, so MRO market activity has also expanded. Next. Many global companies have set up overseas development centers in India. Some of them are GKN, Collins, RTX, etc. Many companies in India have got AS 9100 approval and NADCAP approval. So these are the examples of the hyperactivity which is taking place in India. Next. A flurry of activity from aerospace majors. They have set up their own R&D centers. For example, GE has set up R&D center, Honeywell has set up, Boeing is setting up has set up an R&D center. So many, all the aerospace majors of the world have found it convenient to come here and set up their own system and make use of the qualified workforce or engineering team which is available in India. Next. So cooperation possibilities, the next. These are some of the major cooperation possibilities. Partner with Indian industry, so Indo-Japanese industry can partner on these programs. The top one is IMRH, which is a large size, medium multi-role helicopter, which is under development now, design and development. Then on the right side, you see RTS-70. It is going to be taken up for design and development, about 70-seater aircraft. As we know that in Japan, MRJ project for the time being has been stalled. And then there is a need for some project. So India and Japan can cooperate in that size of aircraft. The next one which you see, Rajas aircraft, is a business jet. It is a 2+7-seat business jet. Today, Japan does not have any business jet program. Japan had business jet program about 40-50 years back. Mitsubishi had a program, but then it was phased out. So this is a very high potential program on which India and Japan can cooperate. Other areas are engines. Japan does not have its own engine. India does not have engines. So there are some activities happening. HAL has started the two types of engine, which is a 25 kilonewton engine. And there is a possibility, I think HAL is open to other companies joining in. And what you see at the bottom, particularly, there are high potential opportunities for development of batteries, production of batteries and sensors in India by Japanese companies, in which Japan has strength. Next. This is a case study, investment ready project example. So go to the next. So it is basically a light business jet, 2+7-seat business jet of contemporary technologies. Next. So it is a long range, high altitude business jet with power by wire and partial fly by wire technology. Next. The business case basically for this is there is a demand for about 1,200 aircraft over a period of 20 years. And each aircraft will cost about $4 to $5 million. It is ready now within 39 months. It can get into service if prototyping and basic investment starts. It needs an investment of about $400 million. And it is possible for Japanese companies to join into this. Next. So these are some of the USP. It is more electric aircraft. It can also later be changed into OPA, what is known as OPA, optionally piloted aircraft, a little later. And then there are many other technologies which can be built into it. As you see, the range is quite long. East coast to west coast of USA, it can travel without refueling. In the Indian region, it can cover SAARC countries. And it is something like a transcontinental aircraft. In any continent, from any point to any point, it can travel. Next. This is sort of a time scale. A lot of work has been done and so much is remaining for it to enter into service. Next. This whole aircraft has been fully designed and systems inboarded. All the groundwork has been done. Next. These were the glimpses of wind tunnel testing done in Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Next. This is a full-scale mock-up kept in a place called Salem. So, which shows the full size of the aircraft. Next. Design organization approval has been given by Indian DGCA for this aircraft. Next, which is an important milestone. Now, I just want to sum up here, actually, and conclude. Actually, both India and Japan have limited civil aerospace products. We do not find what is known as LRU, line replaceable units. In India, we do not have. Even if we have, it is only for military products. India does not export any LRU in commercial space. Similarly, Japan. Japan has got a lot of inputs it provides to a number of programs, but it does not have a sellable commercial aerospace LRUs or systems. Now, India has military aerospace platforms, HAL and DRDO. Japan has amphibian. These are the strength. Japan has large number of precision manufacturing clusters, but costs are very high than in India. India has a huge manufacturing requirement. So we need to find a complementation model. So what we need actually is the pilot production in Japan and mass production in India. Automation and robotics support from Japan in India so that scale of production can be increased in India. So we have to find the requirement of India and capabilities of Japan and the vice versa, and we have to complement each other. Now, India and Japan have no civil aircraft program. It is possible starting with the business jet, which I have just described, and it can be precursor to larger projects. Joint cooperation in system products development are possible. When I say system products like fuel system, landing gear system, braking system, anti-icing system, and so many systems are there for which we do not have product. In both in Japan and India, we can work together. So joint cooperation has high potential in certain MRO areas, including interiors. We do not have a very high potential and highly capable aircraft interior companies. It is being done. Similarly, in Japan, it is being done, but there is need for us to cooperate and develop these businesses. It is also possible to have a common database between Japan and India on inventory of spares. Spares also always become critical. So cooperation on inventory, cooperation of database for MRO is a possibility. So these are some of the things insight came during our interaction in Japan during JA 2024 and earlier during CEO meet. This is what I thought I would share with all of you today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Mishra, for giving such a wonderful insight as to what the possibilities and the areas are for cooperation between India and Japan. Sir, I have a question for you. You're a very well-known voice in the Indian aerospace sector, and you have seen it evolving from a very nascent stage to where it stands today. While the government is very firm on its resolve to pursue Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, there are, however, the complexities of technical skill sets available, the capex issues, and the stringent procurement processes, the tests and evaluations what we have in the country. In your view, how well is the aerospace sector in India poised to meet these challenges?
Actually, we have to take on these challenges head on. So there is Aviation and Aerospace Sector Skill Council of Government of India. It is attempting, by the way, I am also board member of that. So HAL and CIT are the other promoters of that, Aviation and Aerospace Skill Sector Council. So development is happening, training is being given, skills are being developed, but it needs to be strengthened further, definitely. Now, coming to the capabilities in India, it is growing because of two things which have happened in 90 years. HAL and lead organization, HAL, DRDO, NAL have developed smaller companies, number of them, hundreds of them. And further impetus has happened by these companies joining the supply chain of global OEMs. So capabilities have been built, but I think there is no capex, as you said, no good funding system for product development. We do not have product. We have no product which is civil product whether system or whole aircraft, which we export. So there is a need to work together. And what I believe is while we talk about Atmanirbharta, cooperation is always possible within the ambit of that, and Indo-Japan cooperation is possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mishra. Very encouraging to hear such words from you. We now move on to the next speaker in this technical session. And we have the industry representative from India, who is Mr. Julius Amrit. A word about him. Mr. Julius Amrit is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Kolkata. He is the co-founder and CEO of New Space Research and Technologies Limited, which is now making waves in the dash domain in India with their supreme vision and fantastic products, and is perhaps one of the fastest growing companies in this arena. They are pioneers in self-healing swarms, advanced intelligent mesh networks, multi-role UAVs, as well as loitering ammunitions, and is now making multiple programs in next generation mission and technologies, NGM&T. Over to you, Mr. Julius.
Well, good afternoon and konnichiwa to all my friends in India and Japan. And thank you so much, Vibhu sir, for the introduction. Sometimes with that kind of an introduction, it becomes very difficult to, live up to it, but I'll see what we can do, right? So even while we speak today, iSpace in Japan has built a spacecraft which is en route to Moon right now and is about to land next month. And I wanted to share this, very interesting anecdote that almost 10 years ago, iSpace and my company, we tied up together to actually put the iSpace rover onto our spacecraft, which was to be flown by the PSLV. This is about 10 years ago. And I think you hit I think one of the speakers, hit the problem, the nail on the head by saying that, funding becomes the big challenge in all of these enterprises. So we sort of ran out of money and the mission did not happen from our side. But I think it was a very good, event to celebrate because for the first time, the private enterprises in both countries sort of got together. We signed up, we worked together with a lot of help from ISRO and also from JAXA. So coming back to where we are today, I think, this event is very well timed simply because we are in very interesting times. The global geopolitical scenario today is extremely, volatile in the sense that, there is so much to learn from the last two wars. I think a lot of talk right now going on about the world being at a pre-war scenario. And if we are at a pre-war scenario, I think allies, the technology, the nature of warfare, and how we'll be able to sort of work on all of this is going to be very, very critical. So for the last 4 years, at least, we have been very actively engaged with the Japanese ecosystem to see how is it that we can sort of work together. And very proud to say that just about 18 months ago, we demonstrated the first swarm demonstration in Japan. This was in the Tochi prefecture for disaster management. So disasters, nobody can speak more about it than Japan can. And there is this whole new era about how can you use autonomous systems and drones, etc., to work in this, disaster management space. So I had given a talk at that time, and then that was followed up by a demonstration. I'll quickly sort of take just 30 seconds to show you what we did. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. So this is at the demo. This is a swarming system. I just kill the sound so that I can speak. So largely this demonstration was to say that instead of using, the most critical aspect about disaster management is the first 48 hours for survival. And it is extremely critical to be able to identify survivors, look at what happens on the ground, how things move, so on and so forth. So there are three main challenges. First is to identify survivors. The second is to recreate the map, because if there is a natural disaster, the entire road setting, everything changes. So you need to be able to very quickly sort of take a look at how you can create maps. And the third is the whole communication layer in terms of how can you recreate the communication piece and sort of work this out. So this was received very well in Japan, and we had a very good audience, very well educated. This was covered very nicely by the Japanese press as well. And following this and the debrief, there is Fukushima Research Energy Institute, with whom we are now sort of engaging a little further to see how, because that institute has been built on the grounds of how disasters management can typically be worked on. So just two quick short examples. I will try to focus a lot more on what we feel are actual, challenges and what are the opportunities, that we can sort of look at. And one of the important aspect about the whole dash space is about the incoming revolution of intelligent autonomous systems. We call them cyber physical systems. It's basically about saying that how can you make the robotic systems intelligent and sort of get them to work together. And this is the new play, and we can see this happening so acutely in Ukraine. We can see this happening. We just saw it happen in Israel. What is largely happening is that if you look at global defense budgets, Japan is probably going to come in as number 5th. We are number 3 right now. And bulk of this budget actually ends up by going as pensions and salaries and consumables. New product development really does not get that attention. And if you have to focus on new, technology, we have to look at where is it that Japan and us can work together. So there are very two clear areas. I think the first one is about how do you build intelligence? How do you build the cyber part of this whole place, the cybernetics part, the autonomous part, and the intelligence part, where India is very strong. I think our ability to build software is now globally very famous. We are extremely good, very good companies in India who can work on this. And on the hardware side, especially when it comes to aerospace, Japan is the best globally when it comes to anything to do with carbon composites, right? So extremely light structures. This is one very big advantage. The second is the ability to miniaturize things, which is make them smaller. And we can see the result of the smaller in both the wars. And of course, the third biggest advantage that I feel is the ability to really look at the whole sensor technology and the whole sensor stack, right? How can you put sensors onto the systems? Now, if you combine the three, which is aerospace, lightweight structures, miniaturized with sensors, with high intelligence, we can literally create products which can change the scope of and address the need of the hour, which is basically these cyber physical systems. So this is something that we are sort of leading in India. I'll just quickly share a small presentation so that not to take too much of time. So in India, this is what we are pioneering. We are just about 6 years old, but we have been able to really get into a lot of very core capabilities that we have been able to build. Capacity, working very deeply with the Indian MOD, global partnerships. After HAL today, at the private sector, we are probably the largest company when it comes to R&D, more than 350 plus engineers. And largely we are based in Bangalore right now, and it's a full proprietary stack. Several records to us, but I think the last one is the one that is more relevant, and this is something that we are very, very, proud to sort of share of. What is important also is to point out that there are companies in India today who are actually able to create a very strong mark at a global level when it comes to standards. So if you look at the AS 9100 certificate that we've got, this is the first certificate issued by the agency for cyber physical systems worldwide, and for next generations management. And very, very proud to say that, we were able to secure it after almost 1 year of, engaging with the group, telling them about, what is the way that this will work. And finally, after a lot of discussions, we were able to get. So there are elements about design of these cyber physical systems which are very core and very, very different from the way that the rest of the world sort of looks at these systems. The other critical piece, and this is again, I'll just try to share a video. Just give me a second, please. Yeah. So this is more about some of the cutting edge products that we are building. And in one of them, we have what we call as a high altitude stratospheric solar powered platform. Now, why this is very, very critical is because of the fact that not all countries right now have, sorry, just one second. Not all countries have access um, to satellites, and satellite on demand is one of the core requirements worldwide. So what we have been able to build is this solar powered plane. This particular plane can take off from any airport. It can climb to an altitude of about 20 kilometers, and using solar power can keep circling in one area and work like a geostationary satellite for almost 90 days without having to come down. And the reason it has to come down is largely because of the fact that the entire battery life cycles, I mean, typically they will run for about 300 to 400 odd cycles, power cycles, and that's when they'll probably come down. So the impact on this is very, 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 very intense. When you are trying to do persistent surveillance, which is one of the core requirements right now, especially when it comes to both our northern border and the western border in Japan, the ability to carry payloads, to be able to sense, perceive, and understand what is happening actually requires platforms which are able to really go very deep and get the right information and the right intelligence, whether it is LN or, and the rest of the intelligence that, typically which are all your military intelligence that we can get from the space. So this is a product which has dual use. Not only can it work as a platform which can work with persistent surveillance, um, it can also be used as a communication network. It's a tower in the sky sort of a business. So if you are able to put your transmitters onto this with an altitude of 20 kilometers, you don't even need, a ground station to be able to connect. Your normal devices which are able to connect on GSM will still be able to do. And Japan has a program right now. I think there is one that SoftBank is doing with a US HAPS company to be able to do that. And there's a lot of payloads being built. Now, if you look at this from an India perspective, we obviously don't have the payloads, the lightweight payloads that is required. But as a country, we definitely are, I mean, there are still more than 5-10% of our country which is not yet covered by internet. And if you are able to do this as a cause, not only does it help out in certain areas where are very difficult to reach, and this is a big challenge for 5G as well, which is largely the backhaul and how do we manage the backhaul. So a chain of these platforms can very easily help out in decongestionizing some of these networks. So coming back to what our experience is, and I just wanted to share that. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that the policies that we end up by making and the intent are very strong for our countries for decades. Now translating them, into a viable program actually requires a more engagement at the MSME and the SME level. That engagement is not really supported by the infrastructures, which is both policy and governance, and the fact that we have language barriers. So it takes a long time. So if we want to build a relationship between the two countries, what we have seen work, of course, is sitting across the table, having a face-to-face discussion, and building that trust over time. But then if we go a little layer, one layer deeper, we find that it is important for the companies to be housed in the different countries. So now there are incubation centers in Japan, which are very good from a technology development perspective. But in India, very few people are aware of it. Not many people know that the universities and companies support incubation of technology. Similarly, in India also there is a lot of opportunity which is available. But as a program which is focused on building this relationship, especially because in this new geopolitical world, the alliance between our countries has to be very strong. We partners for a very long time. And it's important for us to create very specific programs which can help out on companies in India and Japan who want to work together. And it needs to be carved out separately. So I think this is one of the challenges that we have faced, and exposure also in the Japanese ecosystem. So I'll stop here, and happy to answer any questions, Vibhu sir, from your side.
Thank you so much, Julius. That's a very great insight from you. I just have one question for you. In your views, what are the areas where Japan and India can work together for developing next generation mission and technologies?
Yes. So when we say next generation missions and technologies, we are basically talking about the next generation of warfare, if I were to put that together and say that it's going to be robotic in nature. And if it is robotic in nature, then what is it that we can work together? So I'll go back to what I had said. So our strength in development of software is legend in India. Very, very strong. We understand the concepts. We also understand the new age requirements, which is largely about AI and the whole paraphernalia about AI. On the other side, I think because Japan has a self-defense policy. Within the self-defense policy, it is important to create defense elements. Okay, so not drones, but anti-drones. How do you protect yourself? How do you see your enemy before anybody else sees it? And if you see it, how do you sort of work out? So there is a lot of counter defense or self-defense products that can be built if we look at the robotic level and the miniaturization capabilities that exist in Japan, the sensor capability, and fuse them with our ability to build software and integrate the systems together. There are several cases in point, and of course, we will be competing a lot with American companies on many of these products. But I think what is very critical is that indigenous development and when I'm saying indigenous, I'm saying as allies, if we are able to build products for ourselves, keeping this in mind, it'll go a long way.
Thank you so much, Julius. That's a very interesting thought process, and let's see how it evolves and gets ahead in the future. We now move on to the next technical session. There's a second technical session of this webinar today, and it will be dealing with opportunities for active collaboration by Japanese industries in the Indian space sector. We have two speakers in this session. Each speaker will give their own perspective. The first speaker will give the Japanese perspective, and later on, the Indian perspective will also be heard. I now invite Mr. Eddie Kato, the president and MD of Aerospace Japan, to give the Japanese perspective in this session. Mr. Kato is the president and MD of Aerospace Japan, and prior to this, he has successfully built and ran his own strategic advisory firm, IJCCI. He is also a veteran of Thales. He has been the CEO of Thales in North America and a senior VP in Europe, as well as a general manager in Asia Pacific level. He has also worked in various US satellite companies like Orbital Sciences and Lockheed Martin and the General Electric. Over to you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you. Let me just share the file. I hope you can see my file.
Yes, it is visible, Mr. Carter.
Okay. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Actually, I'm pleased to have a chance to speak here. In my very young days, my first international business was with India. I was selling some satellite equipment for INSAT-2 communication satellite project in those days. So after, I would say, more than 30 years, with this company, talking about collaboration with India is a very honored thing for me to do. We are a Japanese company, 11 years old, but having a global footprint. We have today about 650 employees worldwide, 250 in Japan, and we are listed public company in Tokyo Stock Exchange from last year. We have today about $350 million backlog in the field of on-orbit services, which is a fairly new area in the industry. We are trying to build three elements of the businesses. One is the civil market, civil government market, and another is defense market, and then a commercial market. That's something that we are trying to build a portfolio for our future. All the things in the space business to date didn't have, or very little to have, a post-launch, post-mission support. So space businesses basically repeat of launching a new satellites, providing services. When our satellites go to end of life, then we had to build a new spacecraft and launch again and go from scratch. We are trying to change that model, as you see on the right side. Basically, we are trying to build a new value chain, providing service model in the satellite life. That's basically what we are trying to do. We today have several areas of services either already providing, or to be provided. We actually deal with space debris removal businesses to really improve the situation of the space environment. But not only that, we are today offering life extension services for satellites, fleet management services, satellite refueling services, also SDA type inspection and space situational awareness type services. So key technology that enables those services is what we call RPO, as you see here, rendezvous and proximity operations. This is a very key technology to be an enabler of all the on-orbit services. So we have been developing this technology, and we are proud that we are ahead of the world in this technology today. So with that technology as an asset, we are trying to provide new services to the industry today. One project that we have just finished our operation is called ADRAS-J. This was launched in February last year and finished all the planned missions by end of last year. This was a mission to approach Japanese debris, 15 years old debris, which was H-2A rocket upper stage. We approached this debris by this spacecraft, 150 kilogram small spacecraft with a couple of sensors and lidars on board. And eventually we accomplished to be at 50-meter point from the debris. And also we flew around the debris 3 times. Then further, we approached the debris to 15-meter, 15-meter distant, which was apparently the first in the world, we believe. Of course, not everything is publicized, but as far as we know, this is a world first event that we accomplished. This is a H-2A rocket debris from 50-meter distance. And this looks like to be stopping, but it's moving with a speed of 7 to 8 kilometers per second speed. So we had to match the speed, match the altitude, and took a picture as if it's stopping, right? And I think this one is fly around operations. I'm showing a video to you from the 50-meter point. So we could go around the debris. Again, this debris was moving and rounding, so we had to have a very precise operations to chase this object. So this technology is a RPO technology, and whenever we do a lot of different services, it's very effective. for other dual-use technologies for every element of the industry. Now, with that in mind, I have two charts to talk about India-Japan relationship from our perspective. We have actually started already to move to talk to Indian industry, seeking for collaboration between the two. We think that space activities in Japan and space activities in India have a lot of complementary areas and ways to work together. Not only the natures of space development activities in both countries, we think that we have a lot of common business understanding, business values, business approaches, those kind of things. We share a long history culturally as well. Those must be helpful elements for two industries to go together to work collaboratively. We, of course, are looking at Indian market as potential business place for us to do. Of course, we would like to show our presence, but we decided to go with a stage-by-stage deployment of the partnership arrangement. That's basically what we strategized, and we shared that thoughts to Indian government and the industry players. And we today have already started and is in fact maturing a lot of dialogue with a lot of key players in your country. In fact, today we are already procuring software package for a ground operation system for satellites from an Indian company today. We started our relationship with both ways of interactions, buy and sell relationships. We would like to work with Indian industry and players to look at something that we could use for our projects in Japan. And we are already talking actively with a couple of different Indian companies about propellant systems for satellites or sensors or lidars, those kind of things. We see those things are a potentially good thing for us to consider India as a new source for us to collaborate with in our projects. In the meantime, we would like to see the projects in India on on-orbit services, both in the civil market and the defense market, so that we could contribute with what we have been doing to date in the past 10 years to work with Indian players to jointly support the projects in India. That's basically what we'd like to do. So always it's vice versa. We might look at Japanese program to work together, but we think that in this space market, localization is very important. So it's not something what we want to immediately do, joint venturing or subsidiary to found. I think rather than that, we started to go with a kind of a nominal transaction, leveraging buy and sell relationship on both sides, not one way, so that we see the values of each other and we understand how we would work together. Then, if it makes sense, we can then think about more systematic collaborations, such as joint venturing or other means. So that's basically what we tried to do in our preparation. Actually, we did last year, and we are now quickly trying to deploy our dialogue and arrangements with Indian industry as we speak. We always spoke to government of India, space part of the government, to try to share our thoughts about how we think about the market, how we think about the ways to collaborate. And we think we have been receiving positive responses from your government, so that with confidence we are trying to talk to the industry. Last chart is indeed just image we're talking about. It's again a stage-by-stage deployment about a collaboration. We think supply chain and industrial solutions are key for us to share, and hardware is not the final objective, but it's an important step for us to leverage to build the relationship, and of course we need to leverage the people and resources together as we go. And on top of those, I think accumulating those kind of things, we then can go into more strategic deployments of the relationship. That's our thoughts and the perspective, and let's see how we can go, and we'll try and correct, and we will improve, and we would like to do a better business together in both markets. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kato. I just have one question for you. And, the space in India is really opening up, and there's a lot of proactive push, both from the government and the industry. Now, in these times, how do you see the role which can be played by the Japanese companies for collaboration in India, especially regarding the TOT and skill development?
As I said in my presentation, we see. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. As I said in my presentation, we always look at the market in terms of complementary relationships between us and your side. And we have identified some areas that might help us from supply chain standpoint. That's always the thing. And when I see the new space companies which are emerging in India, I see lots of potentially good partners in the industry. Now, that's why we're talking to them. I think that's a baseline for us. In the meantime, using those companies as entry point for us to the Indian market to work together, and deploying from hardware to a system level solutions together would be probably a good idea for us to attempt. So that's what I think. Yeah, it's indeed a changing market in India with lots of new space companies. And in Japan side, we are one of them too. So there must be a way that new companies would work together to create new values.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kato. We now quickly move on to the next speaker in our this session. I would like to invite Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, the Director General, Indian Space Association. General Bhatt is a former military secretary of the Indian Army and the Director General Military Operations of the Indian Army. He is also the first Director General of Indian Space Association, which is spearheading the cross collaboration in space between the industry and the government. Over to you, sir.
Good morning and Jai Hind to all. It's a pleasure and honor today, and I thank the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry to invite me here. I see a lot of opportunities in the domain of space, and just now before me, the presentation from Astroscale and what he desired, or what could be the probable opportunities, does give us a path of what we can take forward. But firstly, talking of the Indian space in India, the India space journey started somewhere in April 1963, when we had our first sounding rocket. And from then to today, in the last 60 years plus, ISRO has done a fantastic job. And the crowning glory, of course, has been the Chandrayaan-3 mission, where we landed on the south pole of the moon, as well as we have been able to do space docking of our satellites just a month back. All these achievements, of course, are ISRO, which is the Indian Space Research Organization, a government organization totally funded by the government, and their charter includes everything in space in India. But a significant decision was taken by the government of India in June 2020. And what was done was they decided to open space to private sector in India. And thereafter, my organization, that is the Indian Space Association, was created. There was a government organization called InSpace, which was created. And InSpace is a government organization responsible for promotion of space as well as regulating of space as far as the private sectors go. But one of the most important things which has happened is in April 2023, a new space policy has been taken out by the government. And it has now defined the role of ISRO and all other agencies. But what is most important is what it says for the private sector is that the private sector can now be in all domains in space in India. That is in communication, in navigation, in remote sensing, and even they are allowed to do asteroid mining if they are capable of that, and also have colonies in moon in the future. So a policy which is very forward looking and which allows private sector to do all possible things. This policy has been followed by guidelines as to how the private sector has to take permissions and clearances. In this very short time from 2020, we have had a huge growth in startups in India. And from 2 to 4, which were there before the 2020 declaration, today we have about 250 startups operating in upstream, downstream, and midstream. And many of them, what is most importantly, and what I would like to tell you is the leading startups have had significant achievements in the last 4 years. And what are these? One of the most important is that two of our companies have been able to do suborbital launches of rockets. And what is special about them is that both of them one has printed components by 3D printing, while another company has made the whole engine of the rocket by 3D printing. And of course, they are also using cryogenic. Both are disruptions in technology, as you would be aware, in space. And we see them doing the orbital launch in Q3 of this year. Apart from that, ISRO itself made a small satellite launch vehicle, which after doing the trials successfully for that, they are now planning to transfer it to the private sector. That is called the SSLV. So these three companies, two companies who had the suborbital launched, and whichever company takes the transfer of technology of SSLV, will be having three private sector companies in the domain of rocket launching in India. In satellite manufacturing and launching, 5 of our companies have been able to do it in India. The satellites vary from 50 kgs to 150 kgs and even smaller. But 5 of the companies have achieved, been able to prove their capability in technology in that. What Astroscale just mentioned before my talk is very interesting. That is rendezvous and proximity operations. What capability they have. We have companies in India who are trying to do this, and I see a great opportunity of cooperation and collaboration. What the Indian government has been looking at is that though we are one of the spacefaring nation and ISRO has achieved a lot, we have a very meager share of the global economy, just 2.3%. So there is a huge interest that we have a larger share of the global economy, and all efforts are being made to from $8 million today, $8 billion, to take it to 44 billion at least in the next 10 years. And we see a large chunk of it is by foreign collaboration and foreign support. Yes, when the private sector started in India, the challenges they had, which they defined, was one, lack of regulations that we have been able to take care of. Secondly, was testing facilities in India. That has also been taken care of by ISRO providing all the facilities now. The third problem they had was funds, and that does remain a challenge. So many of our companies who are reaching levels of TRL 3, 5, and 7 have had venture capitalist money coming to them in the initial series, pre-series, and in Series A. But when they require large amounts in Series B and all, there is a challenge. So even in an area of cooperation and collaboration, funding from like-minded partners from Japan would be most welcome by many of our companies. We look at it as a great opportunity coming our way. Just a word about my corporation, my company, and like I would be very, very keen to help Astroscale and many of companies in Japan to be able to link up with our companies here. We were created on the behest of the Prime Minister, primarily to create an ecosystem in private space in India. Today, we have about 90 members. They include big companies as well as a large number of startups which have been able to do something tangible. And they are operating in all domains of launch vehicles, manufacturing of satellites, and many of them in applications. Uh, we are looking at one is, and the most important part for us was policy advocacy, where we have succeeded to get a very useful policy made for the private sector. But what is more, what we are looking at? We are looking at international cooperation, development of capacities in India and with collaborations abroad. And also look, we are an interface for all defense related space activities. And in fact, there also we have got a breakthrough. The Ministry of Defense in India identified and defined 75 challenges, which are basically the aspiration of the private sector of the services, defense forces in India, as to what they would require in various domains, be it launch vehicles, satellites, communication, storm satellites, and whatever. These are all in the open domain, and we can share it with you. Again, here, many of our companies would look at opportunities for high-end technology like uh, RPO to, if there is a scope or possibility of that. Uh, Most importantly, we in ISPA carry out 2 seminars every year. In fact, one seminar is 7th to 9th April that we call as the defense seminar, defense space seminar, and a symposium. And then we have a space conclave in November. Why am I mentioning this? This is a place which is a great opportunity to meet the entire ecosystem of companies in space in India. And we also provide opportunities to companies to give out what their uh, products are, and also an opportunity to meet companies, have B2B, and look at cooperations ahead. So one thing I definitely propose is these platforms can be used by Japanese companies to come over here, uh, uh, either physically, which is the most preferred, or even through VC, we can get your products or what you want to be seen by you. And most importantly, meet the companies in India who would look at cooperation and collaboration between B2B, from business to business, from companies to companies. I'm not talking about the government cooperation. That has been very strong between ISRO and JAXA for large number of years. There are many activities in space where the two nations collaborate, and LUPEX mission, which is for the moon, is also there in the anvil for ISRO. I'm not going to talk to what is there in government, but definitely there is a lot of opportunity for companies in Japan and companies in India in space and cooperating with each other. I'll stop here and take on any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Jan Bhatt, sir. I just have one question for you.
Yeah.
In this journey, if you look at the Japanese companies when they, try and come to India, they'll have to navigate through various regulatory challenges, clear legal frameworks for liability, ownership, and data privacy also.
Yeah.
Also, the desired skill sets which can be translated into actuality will also be a challenge. So, how do you see the Indian Space Association as a facilitator or as an enabler to meet these expectations and bridge this gap between the industry and the government?
Uh, you're right. There is a challenge to an extent that today India does look at propagating companies which are India based. But that said, as you are aware, the FDI today in space has increased to from 100% to 54%. And this FDI itself is an opportunity for companies who are interested in India to be able to do business by looking at partners in India. The way out and a solution is having an Indian partner or having an Indian component of the company. And uh, quite a bit of regulatory clarity has come and it is improving every day. And most importantly, there is now a single organization in India which deals with everything to do with space, and that is in space. It is supposed to be a single window to give all clearances for any company, foreign or Indian, to operate in India. And they have taken out the guidelines just a year back, and quite a bit of clarity has come, and they do provide a single window for private space companies in India.
Thank you so much, sir, for a wonderful insight. We now move on to the technical session 3 of this webinar, and that is to discuss the amalgamation of Indian-Japan SMEs with active collaboration in Dash sector. We'll have two speakers on this. We'll have the Indian industry perspective as well as the Japanese industry perspective being given by them. We now invite Mr. Anuj Rikhi to give the Indian industry perspective. Anuj is an alumnus of IIM Lucknow, and he's a partner at Accuracy with over 2 decades of advisory experience, helping clients think through building and optimizing their supply chains, including entirely different partnership models. In his current role, he is focused on cross-border supply chains, merger and acquisitions, and performance improvement, focused on aerospace, industrial, and consumer sections. He's also worked earlier with McKinsey and Deloitte in North America. Over to you, Anuj.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Yes, Anuj, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just so thank you very much for the session today, and thanks to all the speakers. It's been extremely insightful, and thanks for the opportunity to the Indo-Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As Kalan Vibhu mentioned, I'm a consultant, but aerospace is a sector of my interest and passion. And just thought would take this opportunity, having worked in this industry and related industries, what some of the perspectives are in terms of especially the small sector, medium sector companies, how they can be a better part of this ecosystem. I have a small presentation. I'll try to go through it quickly. Please do let me know if it is visible. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So Kalal Vibhu went through the introduction. I think the only thing I'll add to that is because of my work that I've done, I've specifically helped in my career at least 2 Japanese companies expand their operations in India. One was in industrial space and one was in real estate. But to think through their entry strategy, to think through their operating model, and to think through their partnership model is something that I've done besides the other things that were already mentioned. I'll take a couple of, in fact, less than a minute to just also introduce our firm. I am a partner with Accuracy. It is a Paris headquartered advisory firm. We have about 80 partners globally and about 720 people. The distinguishing factor of our company is that we work very specifically in the intersection of strategy and finance. And what that means is we have experts in both these areas, and we amalgamate them across the countries to bring the best services to our clients. And specifically, where this is very important is in the areas of cross-border relationships, cross-border M&A, cross-border entry strategy, and growth strategies. We have a dedicated focus on aerospace. Some of the clients based because of our company's origin from Europe, most of them European, but we have a lot of focus on aerospace with clients like Thales, Safran, Air France, and then also Airbus and Lufthansa. So we have worked a lot with aerospace and defense companies, and this is, as I said at the top of this call, for me personally, also an area of interest. India is, as we all know, is one of the few economies that's actually growing at a very, very fast pace. In fact, India is expected by 2030 to become the third largest GDP. And of all the largest economies, this is the fastest growing economy currently, which of course translates into a lot of interest by several MNCs across sectors, whether it is automotive, consumer durables, consumer goods, or even aerospace and defense, to actively look at India as a market and also look at India as a talent base. Traditionally, there have been players from US, France, Britain who have been present in India, and they're all looking to further expand their presence and opportunities. India is, of course, in a difficult neighborhood, and there is obviously some geopolitical tensions that India has. That's one part of the equation. I think the other part is our equipment, mostly in defense, is old. Nearly 40 to 50% of our equipment is old. And there is a thrust towards modernization, with GDP expected to grow to about 5 to 7% on real basis and 9% on nominal basis, with defense expenditure between 2 to 2.5%. There is a very robust pipeline of products and a very robust defense spending that is anticipated. In the next 5 to 6 years, there is an anticipation of almost close to $200 billion, 185 to be precise, in capital equipment, if you take the revenue expenditure out. And over the years, capital expenditure has also been increasing as a percentage of the overall defense budget in India, given the thrust to improve the defense modernization and defense equipment. Out of the 185, and we'll not go through all the programs, many of these we would all know. I think the important part is that roughly 110 billion is constituted, or 60% of that likely spend over the next 6 years is constituted by these few programs that are listed here. And about 60% of these programs are not yet awarded, although some of them RFIs are out and discussions are on, but many of these programs are not yet fully finalized. And even for programs that are finalized, I think the important part is that there are several subsystems that are always available for companies to participate in. For example, in an air program, roughly 80% of the opportunity is at a subsystem level, because the parts then break up into several components. Now, coming to the defense ecosystem in India, India, from a government and a policy perspective, has been pushing towards increased indigenization, almost with an aspiration to move to 70% of indigenization in India's defense production Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat have been programs that we've all heard about. Indian government also came up with 500 items in the positive indigenization list. There is also prioritization of local manufacturing through the new or the revised defense acquisition plan 2020, with new category coming in of IDDM. And the FDI limits have also been increased for defense, almost 74% automatic without approvals and 100% with approvals, and defense corridors have also been set up. So government is pushing a lot towards, given the requirement for India's defense to modernize in the context of the environment we are at, to indigenize. And traditional players have been these two in the Indian defense ecosystem. They have been foreign OEMs and they have been defense PSUs. And they have had to evolve given this change, both from a demand perspective, which is increasing, and from a policy perspective, which is increased indigenization. So for foreign OEMs, where they were looking, or they were used to mostly getting products made outside, shipped to India, I think there is an increased shift to move to partnerships rather than direct selling. There is increased focus to leverage the Indian market or the Indian talent pool for integration into their supply chains. And we are seeing a lot of examples, and I'll speak more about it subsequently, but the JVs of Cascadian with L&T or Sikorsky with Tata to actually integrate more and more of the Indian parts in their global OEMs. So that's one change that's happening for the foreign OEMs. For the defense PSUs, I think the challenge is that there is a capacity issue. For instance, in marine DPSUs or shipbuilding DPSUs, almost 4 to 5 years of the capacity is blocked. Some of them are also having infrastructure challenges, and obviously, given their decision making, it is measured, which sometimes looks like being slow. But these are some of the challenges that the DPSUs have. DPSUs also, on their part, have been, because of these changes, looking to strengthen partnership with private players. And of course, HAL Tata partnership is there, and there is furthermore. Of course, there have been some very successful programs like BrahMos and the focus that is there on AMCA that's coming up. But I think the overall story is that the traditional players, which were the defense PSUs and foreign OEMs, have had to change their ways of operation because of the changes that are happening in the Indian market. And that's actually leading to a lot of interest by the private players. There are large private players like the Tatas and Mahindras, L&T, etc., who have been for the last maybe 10, 15 years increasingly more focused on the defense sector. But I think the other part of this entire ecosystem are the MSMEs. Just to take an example, an aeroplane of medium complexity will have anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000 suppliers. And so while the government wants indigenization to happen, and while there is interest coming from the private sectors who are increasing their exposure in this sector, because of the nature of the products, the fact that we have to integrate a lot of component manufacturers, MSMEs become very critical to the overall indigenization aims by the government. And of course, government has also made attempts to further integrate the MSMEs into the Indian defense ecosystem. But there are some challenges which we'll just cover in the next few pages. MSMEs in the Indian manufacturing sector, not just defense, they almost account for 40% of the value add. So whatever is the contribution of the manufacturing in GDP, MSMEs account for 40%. They account for almost 60% of the workforce. So this is also in line with what we have seen globally. In India, we have also seen 10 to 15% of MSMEs who have actually graduated to become large cap organizations. So there is the promoter or the MSME promoters' ambitions, their capabilities to actually become very, very large organizations in themselves if they have the right support and the right focus. Specifically now to the defense industry, India has about 12,000 MSMEs. Many of them are involved with several critical and semi-critical components, including benchmark projects like BrahMos and Tejas. And I think the advantages that the MSMEs have is that they're extremely frugal. They're able to reduce the costs because of their frugal innovations, and they're also able to take very quick decisions. So I think that's one of the strong advantages of having the MSMEs in this sector. Government, as I said earlier, has been supporting the MSME sector. 25% of the R&D budget is focused on MSMEs. DPSUs are mandated to buy at least a fifth of their production from MSMEs. And there is also access to labs and testing facilities that government has provided. There's also grants of up to 10 crores under IDEX for MSME companies to expand into this sector. However, there are some challenges, and this is the challenge where the MSMEs often struggle. One is access to finance. We all know that defense programs tend to have long lead time, and given their size and scale, MSME companies often tend to have limited access to finance. And especially when it comes to R&D or setting up testing labs or meeting these testing certifications, I think they often do struggle with that. From a quality perspective as well, there is what we have seen is there's a generally higher rejection rates that MSMEs have because they have limited in-house testing, and quality overall needs to improve. And they also have limited exposure to the global best practices, either in terms of productivity or in terms of quality. And the observations are that MSME productivity is roughly 14 to 15% of the overall organized sector. So it's a large number of people working in this sector, not very organized, significant opportunities to improve quality, and significant opportunities to further integrate them in a more productive way in the entire defense ecosystem. So what are the opportunities for Japanese players, especially as they are looking into India and as they're looking to, in the defense segment, looking to expand using the MSME sector? India and Japan have established certain joint working groups in this space. There have been some JVs. For instance, the Japan's NAC has shared some technology with Bell, so also Sampa Kogyo and so on. So there have been examples now. Of course, Japanese companies have been doing very well in India across sectors. There are close to 1,500 Japanese companies across automotive, across pharma, across industrials that are there. But in defense, we are seeing the focus to have shifted more recently in this. And also at a government to government level, there is increased focus through military exchanges that are happening. I think as the Japanese companies look to understand how best to expand in Indian market, I think there are some learnings that we can see of how other global OEMs have expanded, and there are, from Europe and from North America, a lot of OEMs who are here. I think two clear learnings are there. One is that the global OEMs have been very selective in the programs that they have actually taken part in, and these are also long lead time programs where there have been delays, where you have to be continuously involved with the decision makers. So to make sure that they are present in India, companies have done is they have established R&D centers, and these R&D centers don't just cater to the Indian demand, they actually cater to the global or at least the regional demand. So for example, Honeywell has set up labs in India, Canadian has set up labs in India, and Boeing with the Indian Institute of Science. So you have a certain gravity within the country with a certain set of people who are now working at a global level, but you're also therefore able to understand what's happening in the Indian market more closely than from outside. Similarly, they have established sourcing centers. So they have started manufacturing in India. But again, not only for the Indian market, but integrating them in their global supply chain. Lockheed Martin, for example, has 70 plus Indian suppliers in their global supply chain, and Sikorsky produces the airframes for the helicopter S-92 out of India. So this is a slide which further explains that many of these companies, the way they entered into India was, or expanded into India, was have a presence, have an R&D presence, have a manufacturing presence, be continuously engaged with the decision makers, be continuously engaged with the key programs that you're interested in, and also expand your supplier networks. So when it comes to how can the Japanese companies support the MSMEs, I think there are three clear opportunities that we feel Japanese firms can support in. One is really to identify the key companies or key MSMEs where they can forge strategic partnerships with joint ventures and or even acquisitions. I think the second one is to improving the quality standards of the partners, potentially even setting up testing centers and certification centers so that it can help the companies. And then last is because of the concern that the MSME companies have in terms of getting capital, is to see if soft loans can be provided to their partners through the Japanese investment boards. So I think this is some of the things that the Japanese companies can look at to expanding in India, including expanding from the MSME segment. In terms of how to go about this, I think the traditional way is to look at a long list of MSME companies and put certain filters and then go through a selection process where you will finally do a diligence and come to a decision of whether you want to go in with a joint venture or with an acquisition for that particular company. I'll take a pause now and just wanted to also cognizant of the time, if there are any questions, but this is our view of the overall defense market and the opportunity that is there for the Japanese players.
Thank you so much, Anuj. That's really been very insightful. I just have one quick question for you. And that is, as we're looking at the dash sector in India, the SMEs will definitely have a major role to play since they are the driving wheels of the whole complex supply chains. So in your view, how best can we empower them? And will the Maruti Suzuki model, which has worked so well in the automobile sectors in, empowering SMEs over the decades, does the same model has a potential to replicate its success in this sector also? Your views.
Yeah, I think auto and aerospace, especially when it comes to manufacturing, and not so much on the software or on the AI side, but especially when it comes to the mechanical production, has a lot of overlaps. And therefore, whether it's in terms of the main production processes, whether it's in terms of the component manufacturing and integrating different suppliers, other than maybe the quality standards, which in aerospace is further more stringent than it is in auto. But there is a significant overlap or significant commonalities, and therefore the example that you've suggested for Maruti Suzuki is very, very relevant. In fact, Maruti, when they were expanding in India, they brought some suppliers with them from Japan, but they also developed a lot of Indian suppliers, including taking equity investment in many of these suppliers and taking board positions in many of these supplier companies. And therefore, they were able to not only make sure that the quality standards were better, not only make sure that the productivity was better, but also help the companies from a skill perspective, help the companies from a access to capital perspective, and help them better integrate in the entire production process of Maruti. So therefore, I think this is something which all OEMs can do, and so therefore, given the stellar example that the Japanese companies have had in the auto space, I think something very similar in aerospace can also be done.
Thank you so much, Anuj. We now move on to our next speaker, and that is Mr. Minoru Hanakata, who will give the Japanese industry perspective for this session. He has more than 20 years of experience in the aerospace sector, and he is currently the General Manager of the International Affairs Division of the SJAC, which is Society of Japanese Aerospace Companies. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for having me this sessions. Today I prepared some presentation explaining the Japanese aerospace industry ecosystems. Probably it's good for the understanding for how to collaborate in that. Yeah, now share the screens. Just a moment. You hit top. よいしょ。スライドショー。Okay. Can you, okay? Let's start. Thank you for giving this opportunity to explain Japanese aerospace industries. And also thank you for the in Japan Chamber of Commerce of Industry for this valuable time opportunities. My name is Hanakata, and I work in, as we explained, introduced international department of the Society of Japanese Aerospace Companies, that is industry associations. So Mr. Meshura mentioned, so SIATI and Indian Industry Association and ours is a very close relationships, such as exhibitions or some B2B meetings, something like that. Yeah. The next is so this is SJAC, which is a bureau hub industry association established in 1952 as a private forum industry associations. Now 133 member companies we have. Then activities are same as another industry associations. Industrial policy promotion to government or authority, something like that. And industry foundation build up and maintenance. That means that for headquarters of standard or some quality regulation, something like that. And also cooperation with overseas aerospace industry associations, industries, including SIATI India. And that's a long-time relationship. That's and Japanese international aerospace exhibitions. So we have last year we have exhibitions 2024 and Indian delegation also visiting to us and have a B2B discussion, something like that. Yeah. Then I would like to explain our industry's kind of statistics. Here is statistics. So Japan also very heated by the COVID, this portion. So that's, but now getting back the backing trend, and almost reached the 2 trillion Japanese yen basis, the 2,000 billion level in Japanese yens. And also this pie chart is a very unique one. With Japan, our industry is have a space sector segment about to more than 25% of the share we have. That is a very unique one. Next page. So this chart shows the industrial structures. Not only consist of the aircraft segment, but we also have engine segment, that air engines. That is a very unique one. This engine section is also later we explain. We may participate many type of international collaboration programs, then providing spare parts. That's why they dramatically increasing volumes. And this chart shows how many people working for our industries. So this is a very unique characteristic here. We have strongly hit by the COVID. but there's not so much changes our so-called employees, because we Japan have lifetime employment systems with mandatory retirement age. That's why we are not cutting the employees during the COVID period. So that's why I mean our production base has been maintained. So we have keeping the talented mechanics, engineers, something like that. From now, this section, we explain segment basis, aircraft, engine, component, and spaces. This graphic shows our participation portion in Boeing 787 aircraft highlighted in red. We have many part segment. We participate in this Boeing programs as a program partner, kind of risk sharing partner basis. That is one characteristics issue. This a little busy chart, sorry, but this chart describing which program we participate in commercial side for the commercial, I mean civil side programs. So mainly we are participate in Boeing's programs and some commuters. And as for the Airbus, we are just supplier basis because of we participate with Boeing for the program partners. That's why to avoid the technical contamination, something like that, we are mainly at this moment for the Boeing program with the main. Yeah, that is. Then we are now manufacturing this kind of fuselage or wing is our main portion for this Boeing programs. Then this chart shows the engines, aero engines. We participate in many wide range of engine programs from Pratt and Whitney, Rolls-Royce, and GE, General Electrics. Or we participate just a program partner basis. So module and section we are manufacturing those engines, including the spare parts provisionings as well. This is our program, participate programs. So PW 1000G is probably provided to your country, and B2500 already fly in your country by Indian Airlines, used to be Indian Airlines, and also Trent, G, and something like that. We participate to those programs, these percentages. Then we are providing mainly for compressor and LPT portion. We providing those engines. Sometimes combustion chamber as well. We also have helicopter programs. Helicopter, rotor aircraft. So Subaru Bell helicopter and Kawasaki, this BK. This Kawasaki is a joint venture with collaboration with Airbus helicopters. And the Bell helicopter is Subaru one. This one is a collaboration with Subaru. So we are example of the international collaboration helicopter as well. Yeah. This portion is very unique for our industries. We can provide this kind of galley or something internal equipment, and we also have entertainment or seating or such kind product also providing the commercial aircraft. This is a landing gear, and we also have some oil and hydraulic control or electrical control. And those equipment capability we also have. And the center is very our strong point kind of. We have providing titanium from sponge to this kind of casings, and fibers, carbon fibers we can provide to the Boeing and Airbus or many other aircraft manufacturers. That means we have capability from once we get the including SME. So once we get the orders, we can SMEs or manufacturing company collecting, allocating by themselves from material within Japan. So material to and manufacturing and ship to. That's kind of for one big ecosystem we have. That is a unique point. And then this is a kind of the last explanation for the spaces. So we have this kind of liquid fuel rocket systems we have. Yeah, beginning with Chandra 3 or 4, 5. Such timings we have kept using this H3 rocket. And also we have a solid fuel rocket as well. And also we do not preparing the chart, but we also have a satellite capability as well. Satellite. But our satellite is aiming for high end. High end means for R&D or space exploration, something like that. Such systems we also have. So such Japanese aerospace industry has an ecosystem that covering the wide range of fields and centered mainly for the international collaboration, international programs. And the measures mentioned, there are many possibilities of collaboration at wide range field with Indian company and Japan's. And finally, finally, today's presentation, this chart is a kind of essence of our brochures. So once you visiting our SJAC home pages, you can pick up the more package of the brochures explaining more details, and also that brochure is listing our participating programs, aircraft, engines, helicopters as well. So please visit to our website as well. And thank you for listening. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hanakata. I just have a quick question for you.
Hi.
And in your view, what role can the SGAC play to be an enabler for hand-holding and empowering the Indian SME sector in the Dash arena, taking the experience of the Japanese industry?
Yeah. This is kind of my personal opinions. Basically, SIAT and us have periodically getting the opportunity, exchange the information, or creating the B2B opportunities. Probably that is one good timing. So your SMEs understand or know our Japanese industry as well. And another portion is I do not explain that today there's another field for collaboration, but some possible collaboration field in aerospace is engineering services, as mentioned, as Mr. Meshura mentioned, engineering service already we started. So you are engineering company and us, and also MRO section will be the another sections. So now in Indian civil aircraft, Indian Airlines and LLCs getting many aircraft. And probably there's a lack of the capability for maintenance. That's a good opportunities. And also, finally is advanced air mobile, and advanced AAM, advanced air mobiles. So flying car or some things. That is a new field for the collaboration and for the opportunity both sides. That is my perspective.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hanakata. Really a wonderful insight. We now move on to the last session, that is a technical session 4. It will be dealing with navigating tax, legal, and regulatory in India. And for this, we'll have a speaker to give the Indian tax, legal, and regulatory perspective. We have Mr. R. Sridhar. He's a partner at the Grant Thornton Bharat LLP and has over 28 years experience in navigating through complex tax and regulatory issues impacting business in India. A well-known voice on tax and regulatory matters, he has authored several books and publications and he advises foreign and Indian clients in structuring acquisitions and setting up businesses in India. Well, Sridhar, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Colonel Vibhu Vaibhav, for that kind introduction. And I'm conscious of the time that we have exceeded more than half an hour of what we were slotted for. So I will be brief and specific. Firstly, very good morning or afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining today's session on India-Japan cooperation in DASH. My presentation today focuses on only two aspects, that is tax and particularly the foreign direct investment policy around the DASH sector, that is the defense, aerospace, homeland security sectors. I thank IJCCI for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts. And I hope the slides are useful. I have only 3 slides to talk of. If we can move to the next slide and after this, sir, after the next slide after this. Yeah. So the good part is India is quite evolved in the FDI policy side around each of the 4 segments that we have discussed today. That is defense, aerospace, space, and homeland securities. So the slide in front of you actually talks of the defense and space segments, and I will take you through some of the interesting pieces here. The good part is India's business with Japan has grown over time, and Japan has invested over $43 billion in direct investments from 2000 onwards till date. It's the 5th largest foreign investor for India. And India and Japan also have a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, which was signed in 2011, that has strengthened India's bilateral trade with the Japanese, and over 1,500 companies with 11 specific industrial townships focused on Japan operate from India. The FDI policy in itself emanates from rules that are described under the Foreign Exchange Management Act. These rules are popularly called the Foreign Exchange Management Non-Debt Instrument Rules and are to be read with the Foreign Direct Investment Policy and the press notes that are issued by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in India. On defense, given India's stated mission of Atmanirbharta, since 2014, we have actively pursued an increasingly liberal foreign direct investment policy. Historically, India relied heavily on foreign countries for its defense needs, with about 65 to 70% of defense equipment being imported. This landscape is dramatically shifting, with almost 65% of defense equipment now being manufactured within India. In 2014, the government significantly liberalized the FDI policy and the industrial licensing policy associated with defense manufacturing. Now, it put out a list of defense equipments that are covering items that require industrial license. Any item outside of this list was set free for manufacturing without the need for an industrial license or for any approval under the foreign direct investment rules. The FDI cap that was 26% prior to 2014 has been enhanced to 49% in 2014 and thereafter to 100% in 2016, with the automatic route being extended to FDI up to 49%. Now it stands extended further to 74%, which is now permitted under the automatic route, with the access to the approval of the government and the approval route to FDI beyond 49% also being permitted if the investment is likely to provide access to modern technology or other strategic reasons. Because there was a limit of 49% in the past, government also aligned the previously approved licenses to be continued under the government approval route for FDI beyond 49% to 100%, even in today's policy. Now, overall, even the list of items that are requiring industrial license has also been pruned since 2019. It's also clarified that industrial license is not required for manufacture of parts and accessories of items that are reserved for the defense sector, thereby considerably freeing up the sector in itself. The competent authority to approve foreign direct investment beyond 74% remains the Department of Defense Production, that is Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Home Affairs for manufacturing of small arms and ammunitions, which are covered under the Arms Act. Now, that's also relevant for you to know that arms and ammunitions are separately covered under the Arms Act, and which is part of the local law for India for manufacture of such items. As far as the industrial license applications are concerned, these are processed by the Department of Policy and Promotion under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, in consultation with the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of External Affairs. All foreign investments in this sector are subject to security clearance by the Ministry of Home Affairs as per the Ministry of Defense guidelines. And this scrutiny is required, as you can understand, on account of national security. And the Government of India reserves its rights to review any foreign direct investment that may affect national security. Some of the conditions that you would typically see in the foreign direct investment proposals are that the investee entity should, that is the Indian company, should be self-sufficient in the areas of product design and development. And besides manufacturing facilities, it should also have a maintenance and life cycle support facility of the products that it intends to manufacture in India. That's as far as the defense sector is concerned. Now, if I move to the space sector, one of my previous speakers alluded to this, that it is only as recent as 2023 that a clear space policy was introduced. The good part is that as recent as 2024, the Union Cabinet eased the foreign direct investment on the space sector by prescribing liberalized foreign direct investment thresholds in the various subsectors. So you will see in the slide that the sectors that are identified are satellites for manufacturing and operations, satellite data products, as well as ground segment and the user segment. And these are defined in the policy itself. And there you have investments coming up to 74% under the automatic route. And beyond 74%, if you want to hold this company 100% with foreign investment, you must go to the concerned ministry of the Government of India, that is Department of Space. Even within that segment, if you see the segment around launch vehicles and the associated systems or subsystems and the creation of spaceports for launching and receiving spacecrafts, India has had a more restricted foreign investment threshold of allowing 49% under the automatic route and anything beyond 49% going through the government approval route. And the last but not the least piece on manufacturing of components and systems or subsystems for satellite or ground segment and the user segment, all of that has been freed up. So you have 100% automatic route availability for investments in such segment in India. If I move to the next slide, you will see that the civil aviation policy that India has had has been established for quite some time. And the good part is airports, that is both greenfield as well as brownfields development falls under the 100% automatic route. Air transport services is also automatic up to 100% FDI. as long as you are scheduled or regional transport services, and 49% if you're otherwise. Now, other services such as ground handling or training, etc., is also 100% under the automatic route. Now, if you see on the other side, you have the Homeland Security, which is the last of the the H in our slide, the Homeland Security. Here you will see that private security agencies are heavily regulated. We have an Indian law called Private Security Agencies Regulation Act of 2005, which regulates Homeland Security and private security agencies in particular. And FDI is capped to 74%, which means that you cannot have a foreign ownership of an Indian company beyond 74% in this segment at all. This includes transportation of armored vehicles, apart from coverage of private security agencies providing security for industrial undertakings, etc. Now, though defense sector has opened up, FDI in the private security agency side still remains capped at 74%. Now, I'll quickly move to the next slide on the funding instruments. And here I'll point out one element that you need to be aware of in the DASH sector. That is that if you are trying to set up a business entity in India, the choice of form of entity is limited to the company form, which means that partnerships or limited liability partnership forms of businesses are not typically permitted for foreign direct investment in this sector. So there is a limitation under law that you must ideally get established as a company form if you are in this segment. That is one. Two, there is no bar or no limitation on technology agreements or collaborations. So you are free to enter into commercial negotiation and collaborate to transfer technology or license technology to Indian players or vice versa. And Indian tax law or transfer pricing law does not prohibit any limitation on or put any ceiling or cap on what is the maximum that can be paid across these relationships. Now, as far as funding instruments is concerned, you have two brackets. One is equity and the second is debt. The equity side is typically captured under the foreign direct investment policy, which I alluded to in the previous two slides. And the debt part is typically covered for multilateral funding, typically for such projects by multilateral financial institutions, which can be also in the form of debt. We follow a very liberal policy on debt to the extent of allowing such debt coming through as long as these are covered within the policy frameworks that I have briefly alluded to here. Without getting into the detail, the key element of taxation remains to be kind of seen for us. So I will take you to the next slide, which is my last slide on taxation in India. As you all know, tax and death is inevitable. We follow that policy in India to the core. So if I request us to move to the next slide, please. My last slide typically talks of what tax rates are there in India for the company form of business. And in India, over the years, tax rates have flattened out for corporate taxes. And now largely, if you are a large company with a turnover of over 4,000 million rupees, you would not enjoy any concessional tax. You would be effectively at about 30%, an effective tax rate of about 34.9%. If your turnover does not exceed this limit, then your tax rate drops to effectively about 29%, 29.1 to be specific. And if you are a company which is opting out of any concessional tax regime, and one of my previous speakers alluded to concessional regimes under the special economic zone rules, if you do not choose to take any concessions under that regime, you are able to take a flat tax rate of 22%, which effectively comes to about 25.17% in tax rate itself. The concessional tax rate also for new manufacturing facilities that was extended has also been kind of sunset, and this is now limited to companies that were set up on or before 31st March 2024. These companies enjoyed a lower tax rate for lifetime of 17 odd percent. Now, India has a very clear multilateral treaty that is called the Double Tax Avoidance Treaty, or the MLI in international tax law, with Japan. This is consequent to the CEPA being in place. India offers, the treaty offers a lower tax of 10% withholding on royalties or fees for technical services, or interest or dividend that is paid out from an Indian entity to a Japanese entity. This treaty rate is lower than the domestic rate, which is typically around 20% for all of these income streams. The good part is Japan also gives credit for such tax that is withheld in India under Japanese law. So you have the ability to take credit of the 10% completely in Japan if there was a tax in Japan for this income stream. With the rider that in India, the Japanese company is liable to file a tax return in India to claim the 10% return income, as well as the rider that for that filing of the tax return, the Japanese company also needs to obtain a tax registration number, typically called the PAN, the permanent account number, for such company in India. So briefly, that is what I had to say today from a tax and regulatory perspective. I hope these slides were useful for the audience, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Sridhar, for taking us, or rather navigating through the maze of tax and regulatory issues in India. I have a quick question for you. In your view, what is the position in FDI and in industrial licensing policy if an item can be used for both military and civil applications, that is dual use applications?
Right. So, Colonel, the good thing is in 2014, the government clarified this position. And the position now is that where there is dual use items, that is items having military as well as civilian applications, if they are not forming part of the exclusive list that is prescribed by the Ministry of Commerce, which is the list of defense items requiring industrial license. If they do not form part of that list, then there is no need for an industrial license, one. And further, there is also no need for any limitation of the foreign direct investment policy to apply for such items.
Thank you so much, Sridhar. So with this, we have concluded all the 4 technical sessions which we had planned for today's webinar. I now request Ms. Suguna Ramamurthy, Secretary General, Indo-Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to kindly give the vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Colonel Vaibhav, coming back again over here. It's indeed very nice. At the outset, on behalf of all the speakers and the participants, I congratulate ISRO, particularly Dr. Veeramuthuvel, for cooperating for Japan-India, for JAXA and ISRO collaboration. And I wish ISRO and JAXA a lovely laurels for future missions to come. And it's indeed, when we started this webinar, we were discouraged badly by many people around us, saying that it's a very difficult topic. You cannot do justice and so on and so forth. Particularly Japan being so sensitive to defense subject, they said, how will you get this cooperation from Japanese? It's indeed very nice that we had really the best of speakers, the stalwarts from every segment of Dash today. And I have a lot of points which I have noted down. Because of paucity of time, let me just give like a shot in the arm. Mr. Miyoshi has been very encouraging about the supply chain network between India and Japan. And Arunakar Mishra, Mr. Arunakar Mishra talked about civil aviation, the cooperation in MRO area between India and Japan. Mr. Julius Amrit, who talked about self-defense products where India and Japan can collaborate closely. And of course, he praised about the Indian software industry scenario today is something which is we are all happy about. And Mr. Edikato again re-emphasized that there is a plenty of scope for Japan and India to cooperate with each other in aerospace sector. General Butt, of course, he talked about FDI. The startups in India is really on the upswing, and it is time. And the single window system that the government of India has introduced has to be put in good use. And the private operators in this particular sector, the Dash sector, is on the upswing. Mr. Anuj, of course, he talked about the defense modernization is really a welcome thing. And the Indian defense budget having been increased takes a top priority of the Defense Department and the Indian government. It is really necessary to integrate the component manufacturers is what he had talked about. And of course, there are over 12,000 MSMEs who are already there doing the critical components manufacturing is something which Mr. Anuj pointed out is really a welcome move. And Mr. Hanakata talked about the Japan aerospace contribution and how India and Japan can cooperate, particularly in service engineering and MRO, is something that is really good. And of course, Sridhar had so much to talk about, integrating the three key departments of Government of India, the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and of course, the Commerce and Industry Department working together on the policy and, revamping the entire system to make things easy for us is something which is really laudable. And each of these subjects needs to be really discussed at length, for which at least we need one day. And Colonel Vaibhav has really done justice to us today. We are not happy that we are not able to take the questions from the participants because of paucity of time, and I apologize to all of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we know there is a tremendous potential to jointly harness the domain of Dash for mutual benefit of Japan and India is witnessed in today's seminar. All we need to do is to integrate and incorporate, amalgamate the SMEs and put their strength together for a self-sustaining ecosystem of Dash. We need to explore the possibilities of JVs or setting up subsidiaries in India. The technology transfer and the IPR sharing will be the key demonstrators. The complex tax and regulatory framework of India will need hand-holding, and we have people like Mr. Sridhar with us to exactly carry out what is required for this. And most importantly, we need to understand as to how the Japanese have succeeded in upskilling their workforce with better technology tools, systems, and processes to enhance the efficiency of working. Of course, the government of India is looking to upskill the labor force. And Mr. Bhatt also re-emphasized this particular point. We invite valuable inputs and support from the experts from Japan as to how we can upgrade and upskill the Indian skill force. The Indo-Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, IJCCI, does not work with a profit motive, and will be delighted to play a catalytic role in bringing the governments together, in bringing the private partners together between Japan and India. Ladies and gentlemen, my grateful thanks to all the participants of the Zoom webinar today. And the stalwarts and experts, besides a very busy schedule, have set aside time for us and spent really a very good time. And it was an insightful webinar today. Thank you so much to one and all the speakers who have really made this webinar very vibrant. And my special thanks to the live IBC team, Mr. Shankar and Mr. Sheikh, for giving us an uninterrupted and a beautiful presentation of all the participants. Thank you so much, one and all. I think we need to, I have a small request to Mr. Vaibhav. Now, so much has been discussed, it should not let go of. So it is our duty to put things together and bring out a white paper, and I seek the support of one and all of you to come up with your presentation material so that I can work with Mr. Vaibhav in coming up with a beautiful paper, which will be not only good for the industry, but also for the two governments. I hope you'll all agree with me.
Absolutely, we need to do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, one and all, for joining us today. Please, let's keep in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.